The rope felt rough against Marcus Chen's neck as the alien executioner adjusted the noose with four-clawed hands. Around him, thousands of Zeltharian citizens filled the massive Colosseum, their crystalline voices creating a haunting chorus of approval. The midday sun of Zelthar Prime cast strange purple shadows through the dome's translucent walls, and Marcus could smell the metallic tang of the alien atmosphere, even through his breathing apparatus. 3 months. That's how long he'd been a prisoner on this world after his reconnaissance mission went wrong. 3 months of interrogation, torture, and psychological games. The Zeltharians had tried everything to break him, to extract Earth's military secrets, to learn about human weaknesses. They had failed completely. Marcus stood perfectly still on the wooden platform, his hands bound behind his back with energy shackles that hummed with alien technology. His Navy SEAL training had prepared him for many scenarios, but being executed by crystalline humanoids on an alien world hadn't been covered in basic training. Still, he maintained his composure, his breathing steady, his mind sharp. The Zeltharian High Executor, a towering figure named Vextar, stepped forward. His body was composed of living crystal that shifted between deep blue and violent purple, and his 6 eyes glowed with satisfaction. When he spoke, his voice resonated through bioacoustic translators that made his words understandable to human ears. "Human warrior," Vextar announced, his voice carrying across the Colosseum through massive sound amplifiers. "You've been found guilty of trespassing in sacred Zeltharian space, of resisting righteous capture, and of refusing to provide intelligence about your primitive species. The sentence is death by hanging, to be carried out immediately." The crowd's crystalline voices rose in approval, creating a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. Marcus said nothing. He had learned long ago that dignity in the face of death was sometimes the only victory available. Vextar continued, clearly enjoying his moment of triumph. "Your people sent you here, believing you could scout our defenses undetected. They believed your primitive stealth technology could evade our sensors. They were wrong, as they are wrong about everything. When we locate your homeworld, we will show them the same mercy you have shown our sovereignty." This drew an even louder response from the crowd. Marcus could see Zeltharian children in the front rows, their small crystalline forms glittering with excitement. Their parents pointed at him, explaining in their musical language how this represented the superiority of their species over the barbaric humans. The executioner, a massive Zeltharian whose crystal body was almost black with age, tested the rope mechanism. The platform beneath Marcus's feet was designed to drop away, leaving him suspended. It was a crude method for such an advanced civilization, but the Zeltharians believed in the psychological impact of traditional executions. Marcus closed his eyes and thought of home. Not Earth specifically, but the concept of home that every SEAL carried with them. The idea that somewhere in the galaxy, humans continued to explore, to grow, to push boundaries. He thought of his team members who had made it back to the ship, who would carry word of what they had found here. The Zeltharians had made a critical error in their assessment of humanity. They saw only primitive technology, only small ships, and limited numbers. They didn't understand the concept of reconnaissance. They didn't grasp that Marcus's mission had never been to fight or to steal secrets. It had been to observe, to learn, and to report back. And he had succeeded beyond their wildest imagination. Hidden beneath his skin, in a subcutaneous pocket that even Zeltharian medical scans had missed, was a quantum communication device no bigger than a grain of rice. It had been recording everything for 3 months. Every conversation, every piece of technology, every tactical detail, every weakness in their society and military structure. More importantly, it had been transmitting. The data burst went out every 72 hours, aimed at a relay beacon his team had deployed in the outer system. By now, that information had traveled across multiple quantum relay points and reached not just his superiors, but the highest levels of the Terran Defense Alliance. They knew about Zeltharian technology, about their society, about their plans for expansion into human space. They knew about the children in the audience and the civilians and the complex social structure that made this species so dangerous. The Zeltharians weren't just warriors. They were an entire civilization convinced of their own superiority, willing to commit genocide against any species they deemed inferior. Marcus opened his eyes and looked directly at Vextar. For the first time since his capture, he smiled. The High Executor's crystalline features shifted, showing confusion and anger. "You find humor in your death, human." "I find humor," Marcus said clearly, his voice carrying across the silent Colosseum, "in your ignorance." The crowd stirred uneasily. This wasn't how executions usually went. The condemned were supposed to beg, to show fear, to validate Zeltharian superiority through their terror. Vextar stepped closer, his 6 eyes focusing intently on Marcus. "Explain your meaning, primitive." Marcus's smile widened. "You think you caught me? You think I failed? You have no idea what reconnaissance means, do you? You have no concept of intelligence gathering. For 3 months, you've been showing me everything. Your technology, your society, your military capabilities, your plans. You've been teaching me your language, showing me your culture, demonstrating your tactics." The High Executor's crystal body shifted to a deep red, indicating rising anger. "None of this matters. You are alone, far from your kind, about to die." "Alone?" Marcus laughed, a sound that seemed unnaturally loud in the vast space. "I haven't been alone for a second. Every word you've spoken to me, every piece of technology you've shown me, every tactical discussion I've overheard, every detail about your society and your military capabilities has been recorded and transmitted back to my people." The red in Vextar's crystal body deepened to near black. "Impossible. We scanned you completely. We found no communication devices." "You found no communication devices that you could recognize," Marcus corrected. "But then, you wouldn't, would you? You're so convinced of your technological superiority that it never occurred to you that we might have developed something you couldn't detect." The executioner looked to Vextar for instructions, but the High Executor was focused entirely on Marcus now. Around them, the crowd had grown restless, sensing that something was wrong with their entertainment. "Even if this were true," Vextar said, "it changes nothing. Your people are primitive. Even with knowledge of our capabilities, they cannot hope to match us in battle." Marcus's expression grew serious. "That's where you're really wrong. See, you've been so focused on our technology being different that you missed the fundamental difference between our species. You build your society around the concept of superiority, of dominance through strength. You believe that the strongest, most advanced civilization always wins." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But humans don't fight that way. We don't win through superiority. We win through adaptation, through innovation, through the willingness to do whatever it takes to survive. We win through sacrifice." The quantum communicator under his skin pulsed once, indicating an incoming transmission. The signal was brief, but clear. "Package received. Delivery confirmed. Execute final protocol." Marcus had been waiting 3 months for that signal. "You want to know what makes humans dangerous?" he continued, his voice growing stronger. "It's not our technology. It's not our ships or our weapons. It's our willingness to sacrifice everything for the survival of our species. It's our ability to turn every defeat into intelligence, every capture into reconnaissance, every death into a weapon." Vextar's 6 eyes narrowed. "You speak of death as if it gives you power. Death is merely the end of function. For your species, maybe," Marcus said. "But humans understand something you don't. Every death has meaning if it serves the greater purpose. Every sacrifice builds toward victory. You think hanging me here makes you strong? You think killing one human send a message?" The quantum communicator pulsed again. This time, the signal was different. Longer, more complex. Marcus felt a warm sensation in his chest as the device activated protocols he had hoped never to use. "You're about to learn something about humans that no alien species has ever truly understood," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly across the now silent Colosseum. "We don't just gather intelligence. We don't just adapt and overcome. When necessary, we make choices that no other species would even consider. High Executor Vextar stepped back involuntarily, though he probably didn't understand why. Some primitive instinct, perhaps a remnant from his species' evolutionary past, was warning him that the human before him had become something else entirely. "Execute him," Vextar ordered, his voice cracking slightly. "Execute him now." The executioner moved to activate the platform release, but Marcus spoke again, his voice somehow carrying over the mechanical sounds of the execution device. "The quantum communicator in my chest isn't just for intelligence transmission," he said calmly. "It's also connected to a very special piece of human technology, something we developed specifically for situations like this. Something designed to be activated when a human operative is about to die in enemy territory." The warm sensation in his chest was growing stronger. Around the Colosseum, sensitive Zoltharian instruments began to detect unusual energy readings, but their operators didn't understand what they were seeing. "You see, when humans are faced with an enemy that threatens our entire species," Marcus continued, "we don't just rely on conventional weapons. We develop contingencies, special protocols, last resort options." The platform shuddered as the executioner activated the release mechanism, but Marcus kept talking, his words racing against time. "3 months ago, when my ship was captured, we initiated something called Protocol 7. Every human vessel in this sector of space received the same set of coordinates. They've been waiting, watching, preparing. The intelligence I've been gathering wasn't just from my commanders. It was targeting data." The platform began to drop, but the warm sensation in Marcus's chest had become a burning heat that was spreading through his entire body. "The quantum device in my chest contains a very special element," he said, his voice somehow growing louder even as the news tightened. "An element that doesn't exist naturally in this galaxy. An element that becomes highly unstable when exposed to specific quantum frequencies." Vextar's crystalline features had gone completely white, the Zeltharian equivalent of terror. "Stop the execution," he screamed, but it was too late. As Marcus's feet left the platform, the quantum device in his chest reached critical resonance. The last thing he said, his words somehow carrying clearly across the entire Colosseum despite the rope around his neck, was, "We call it a quantum cascade initiator. And you're about to discover why." The explosion that followed wasn't nuclear or chemical. It was something far more sophisticated and far more terrifying. The quantum cascade effect began in Marcus's chest and spread outward at the speed of light, interacting with the unique crystalline composition of Zeltharian architecture and technology. As the Colosseum began to shake and the first cracks appeared in its crystalline walls, every Zeltharian in the audience started to understand that they hadn't executed a prisoner. They had triggered something that no civilization in the galaxy had ever seen before. They had underestimated humanity's willingness to sacrifice one for the survival of all. And that miscalculation was about to cost them everything. The quantum cascade effect spread through the Colosseum like invisible wildfire. Within seconds of Marcus Chin's death, the crystalline walls began to resonate with frequencies that should have been impossible. The Zeltharian engineers who had built this structure using their species' most advanced harmonic technologies watched in horror as their own materials turned against them. High Executor Vextar stumbled backward from the execution platform as massive cracks appeared in the floor beneath his feet. The crack pattern wasn't random. It followed the exact lines of the crystalline matrix that gave Zeltharian architecture its incredible strength. The quantum cascade was finding and exploiting the fundamental resonance frequencies of their building materials. "Emergency evacuation," Vextar shouted through his bioacoustic amplifiers, but his words were barely audible over the growing harmonic scream of failing crystal structures. Around the Colosseum, panic spread as quickly as the physical destruction. Zeltharian families tried to flee toward the exits, but the cascade effect was moving faster than they could run. The children who had been so eager to watch the execution of a primitive human now cried out in terror as the ground beneath them began to sing with deadly frequencies. Captain Zephnor, commander of the Colosseum's security forces, activated his emergency communicator. Command Center, this is Zephnor. We have a catastrophic structural failure in the main Colosseum, requesting immediate emergency response teams. The response came back filled with static and interference. Captain, we're reading massive energy fluctuations across the entire structure is compromising. Evacuate immediately. The communication cut off as another wave of quantum resonance pulsed outward from where Marcus had died. The hanging rope still swayed above the execution platform, but there was no body. The quantum cascade had consumed everything within a 10-meter radius of the initiator device, leaving only a perfectly spherical void in the crystalline floor. Dr. Yelena, the chief Zeltharian scientist who had overseen Marcus's interrogation, watched the destruction from her observation booth high in the Colosseum walls. Her analytical mind was racing to understand what she was witnessing. The energy readings were unlike anything in their databases. The quantum signatures were completely foreign to Zeltharian science. Impossible, she whispered, her crystalline fingers dancing across her recording devices. The energy output is exponentially greater than the mass energy conversion of a single organic being. The cascade effect is drawing power from somewhere else. Her instruments detected something even more disturbing. The quantum field wasn't dissipating as it should. Instead, it was growing stronger, feeding on the crystalline matrix of the building itself. Every piece of Zeltharian technology in the Colosseum was becoming fuel for the cascade. Through her bioacoustic communicator, she heard reports flooding in from across the city. The effect wasn't limited to the Colosseum. Every building, every vehicle, every piece of technology within a growing radius was beginning to experience harmonic resonance failures. Command Center, she transmitted urgently. This isn't just a structural collapse. The human's device has initiated some kind of chain reaction. It's targeting our crystalline technology specifically. Everything we've built is vulnerable. The response was immediate and panicked. Dr. Yelena, we're reading cascade effects in 17 different districts. The pattern is expanding in a perfect circle from your location. Estimated time until citywide collapse is 43 minutes. 43 minutes. In less than an hour, the greatest Zeltharian city on their homeworld would be reduced to rubble. But Dr. Yelena's scientific mind had grasped something even more terrifying than the immediate destruction. This was too precise to be an accident. The quantum cascade device hadn't been designed just to create destruction. It had been specifically engineered to target Zeltharian technology. That meant the humans had understood their crystalline matrix technology well enough to create a weapon specifically designed to destroy it. But how was that possible? Marcus Chun had been captured on his first contact with their civilization. His ship had been taken in the outer system before any human had ever set foot on a Zeltharian world. There had been no opportunity for humans to study their technology, unless they had been studying it for much longer than anyone realized. Dr. Yelena's 6 eyes widened as the implications hit her. The human ship that had been captured wasn't the first contact. It had been reconnaissance. But not just recent reconnaissance. The precision of this weapon suggested years of study, years of observation, years of preparation. How long had humanity been watching them? She activated her emergency data recording protocols and began transmitting everything to the orbital command stations. If the surface cities were going to be destroyed, at least the information might survive. But as she worked, another terrifying possibility occurred to her. What if this wasn't just about one city? Marcus Chun had mentioned coordinates. He had said that every human vessel in the sector had received targeting data. If this cascade device could be activated remotely, if it could be triggered by quantum communication, her hands shook as she accessed the planetary defense network. Across the surface of Zelthar Prime, she could see the status indicators for major cities, military installations, and industrial complexes, all showing normal operations. But if the humans had been planning this, if they had been placing operatives, the first indicator changed from green to red. The city of Kethmore, 600 kilometers to the north, was reporting massive structural failures. Then another. Velathar, on the southern continent, went dark completely. By the crystalline depths, Dr. Yelena whispered, they're not just attacking one city. They're attacking everything. The cascade effect in the Colosseum had now consumed the entire lower level. The elegant crystalline architecture that had taken decades to grow was collapsing into harmonic fragments. But this wasn't random destruction. As Dr. Yelena watched through her instruments, she could see that the cascade was following the resonance patterns of their technology. It was learning. Every piece of Zeltharian technology it encountered taught it more about their crystalline matrix composition. Every building it destroyed gave it better information about their construction techniques. Every vehicle it disabled added to its understanding of their engineering principles. The humans hadn't just created a weapon to destroy Zeltharian civilization. They had created a weapon that became more effective the more it destroyed. A weapon that adapted and improved as it consumed their technology. Outside the Colosseum, the city of Zethkalar was in chaos. Zeltharian citizens fled through streets as their homes, and businesses began to resonate with lethal frequencies. The beautiful crystalline spires that had been the pride of their architecture were singing themselves to death, creating a haunting musical requiem for their civilization. Emergency response teams found themselves helpless. Their vehicles, their equipment, their communication devices were all vulnerable to the cascade effect. The more advanced the technology, the more susceptible it was to the quantum resonance. General Thexvat, military commander of the Planetary Defense Forces, stood in his command center trying to coordinate a response to something that defied every tactical principle he understood. His crystalline body shifted between colors rapidly, indicating extreme stress and confusion. Status report, he demanded through the command network. Sir, came the reply from his intelligence officer. We now have cascade effects in 37 major population centers. The pattern indicates coordinated activation of devices placed throughout our infrastructure. This is not the result of a single weapon. This is a planned assault involving multiple activation points. General Thexvat's strategic mind began to grasp the scope of what they faced. The humans hadn't just captured one of their soldiers and turned his execution into a weapon. They had infiltrated Zeltharian society at the deepest levels. They had placed cascade devices in major cities across the planet. But how? When? The Zeltharians had considered themselves the apex species in this region of space. Their technology was superior to anything they had encountered. Their society was perfectly ordered and controlled. How could a primitive species like humanity have penetrated their defenses so completely? Sir, the intelligence officer continued, we're also detecting anomalous readings from our orbital stations. The cascade effect appears to be spreading beyond the planetary surface. That was impossible. The orbital stations were separated from the planet by thousands of kilometers of vacuum. Quantum cascade effects couldn't propagate through empty space. Unless, are our orbital facilities reporting any recent maintenance work? General Thexvat asked, though he already suspected the answer. Sir, checking records. Yes, sir. Over the past 6 months, we've had maintenance teams working on quantum communication arrays, defensive systems, and structural support matrices. The work was performed by certified Zeltharian contractors using properly authenticated credentials. General Thexvat closed all 6 eyes as the full scope of the human infiltration became clear. The maintenance teams hadn't been Zeltharian. They had been human operatives using technology advanced enough to fool even their best security protocols. The humans had been placing cascade devices throughout their infrastructure for months, possibly years. This wasn't an execution that had gone wrong. This was the final phase of the most sophisticated military operation the galaxy had ever seen. Communications, he ordered, establish contact with the Zeltharian High Fleet. We need to evacuate key personnel and government officials immediately, and activate the emergency protocols for potential planetary abandonment. Sir, came the hesitant reply, we're having difficulty establishing contact with the fleet. The quantum communication arrays are experiencing massive interference. The cascade effects appear to be disrupting our FTL communication network. Of course they were. The humans had targeted everything. They had studied Zoltharian technology so thoroughly that they understood not just how to destroy it, but how to prevent them from coordinating a defense or calling for help. As General Thexvat watched his tactical displays show one red indicator after another, he began to understand that they weren't dealing with a primitive species that had gotten lucky. They were dealing with a species that had been watching, learning, and planning for this moment for far longer than anyone had realized. The humans had turned Marcus Chin's execution into the trigger for the complete destruction of Zeltharian civilization. But the execution itself had been just the final act in a much larger play that had been in motion for years. In the collapsing Colosseum, Dr. Yelena made one final transmission before the cascade effect reached her observation booth. Her message was brief but clear. To any Zeltharian who receives this recording, know that we have gravely underestimated the human species. They are not primitive. They are not inferior. They are the most dangerous enemy our civilization has ever faced, and we may already be too late to stop them. The cascade wave consumed her and her equipment before she could say anything more. Admiral Kexthran stood on the bridge of the Zeltharian flagship Crystalline Supremacy, watching the tactical displays with growing disbelief. The massive warship, constructed from the finest harmonically tuned crystal matrices in the Empire, had been patrolling the outer system when the cascade effects began. Now, 6 hours after Marcus Chin's execution, the Admiral faced a reality that challenged everything the Zeltharian Empire had believed about itself. Zelthar Prime, the crown jewel of their civilization, was dying. Status report on the planetary surface. Admiral Kexthran commanded, his crystalline body shifting to deep purple with stress. Commander Veltorix, his chief science officer, manipulated the holographic displays with trembling hands. Sir, we have confirmation of cascade effects in 112 population centers. Major cities are experiencing complete infrastructure collapse. The harmonic resonance is following the crystalline matrix lines in our architecture, but the frequency signatures are unlike anything in our databases. The Admiral's 6 eyes focused intently on the readings. In his 3 centuries of service to the Zeltharian Empire, he had never seen anything like this. The destruction was too precise, too targeted, too thorough to be natural or accidental. Analysis of the cascade initiation points, he ordered. Sir, came the hesitant reply. That's where the data becomes disturbing. We've identified 17 primary cascade initiation points across the planet. Each one corresponds to a location where human prisoners have been held over the past 2 years. Admiral Kexthran's crystalline form went rigid. Human prisoners? We've been capturing humans for 2 years. Yes, sir. According to military records, we've intercepted 43 human vessels attempting to scout our territory. In each case, we capture the crews for interrogation before disposal. Standard protocol for dealing with primitive species attempting espionage. The Admiral felt something cold forming in his core matrix. And these prisoners were held at the cascade initiation points? Yes, sir. Each facility that housed human prisoners is now the center of a cascade effect. Sir, I don't believe this is a coincidence. Admiral Kexthran was beginning to understand the scope of what they faced. The humans hadn't just infiltrated their society. They had allowed themselves to be captured. They had used their imprisonment as an opportunity to place cascade devices throughout Zeltharian infrastructure. Commander, he said slowly, how many human prisoners did we execute? Sir, reviewing records, we executed 38 humans over the past 2 years. Each execution was performed according to standard protocols, designed to demonstrate Zeltharian superiority to other primitive species. Each execution had been a trigger. Each death had activated a cascade device. For 2 years, the humans have been sacrificing their own people to plant weapons throughout the Zeltharian Empire. It was a strategy so ruthless, so coldly calculated, that it defied the Zeltharian understanding of how primitive species thought and acted. Sir, Commander Veltorix continued, there's something else. We're detecting unusual quantum signatures from our own vessel. The admiral's form shifted to red, indicating alarm. Explain. Sir, 3 months ago, we performed routine maintenance on our quantum communication arrays. The work was done by a certified engineering team with proper authorization codes. But, given current circumstances, I recommend an immediate internal scan for foreign technology. Admiral Kex Thran activated ship-wide scanning protocols, though he suspected what they would find. The humans hadn't just infiltrated planetary installations. They had infiltrated the fleet itself. The results came back within minutes. Hidden throughout the ship's crystalline matrix were 17 quantum cascade devices, each one small enough to evade standard security scans, but powerful enough to destroy entire sections of the vessel. The devices were inactive, but they were definitely present. And if they were on a flagship, they were probably on every major vessel in the fleet. Communications, the Admiral ordered, establish contact with all fleet elements. I want immediate internal scans performed on every vessel. And I want a complete review of all maintenance work performed in the past year. The responses came back quickly, and they were all the same. Every major warship in the Zeltharian fleet had been infiltrated. Every vessel had cascade devices hidden in their systems. The entire military force that the Zeltharians had built to enforce their dominance over primitive species had been compromised by those same primitives. But how? The Zeltharians prided themselves on their security protocols, their technological superiority, their ability to detect and counter any threat from less advanced civilizations. Commander Veltorix provided part of the answer as he continued his analysis of the maintenance records. Sir, the engineering teams that performed the work all had perfect credentials. Their identification codes matched our databases exactly. Their knowledge of our technology was complete and accurate. But there's one anomaly. What anomaly? Sir, according to genetic scans, all of the maintenance personnel were pure-blood Zeltharians. But according to the quantum signatures we're detecting, the cascade devices are definitely of human origin. The only way to reconcile this data is if Admiral Kex Thran finished the thought. If the humans have technology advanced enough to perfectly mimic our biological signatures and our cultural knowledge, the implications were staggering. The humans weren't just more advanced than the Zeltharians had realized. They were so far ahead that they could infiltrate the most secure facilities in the Empire without detection. They could perfectly impersonate Zeltharian citizens. They could access the most classified military installations. How long had they been watching? How long had they been preparing? Sir, Commander Veltorix said urgently, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's from the Planetary Emergency Council. The holographic display activated, showing the flickering image of Chancellor Mexval, the highest-ranking Zeltharian official still alive on the planet. His crystalline form was cracked and damaged, indicating severe stress and possible physical trauma. Admiral Kex Thran, Chancellor Mexval said, his voice distorted by interference. The situation on the surface is beyond catastrophic. We estimate that 60% of our planetary infrastructure has been destroyed. The cascade effects are still spreading, and we have no way to stop them. Chancellor, the Admiral replied, we're reading similar infiltration throughout the fleet. This appears to be a coordinated assault that has been in planning for years. Admiral, there's something else. We've managed to decode part of the quantum signature from the cascade devices. The technology isn't just human. It's specifically designed to target Zeltharian crystalline matrices. The humans have weapons that were built specifically to destroy our civilization. Admiral Kex Thran felt his core matrix growing colder. Chancellor, are you saying the humans have been preparing for war with us? Admiral, I'm saying the humans have been preparing for the complete annihilation of our species. And, based on what we're seeing, they may already have succeeded. The transmission cut off as another cascade wave swept through the planetary capital. Admiral Kex Thran stood silent on his bridge, trying to process the magnitude of their situation. The Zeltharian Empire had believed itself to be the apex species in this region of space. They had considered humans to be primitive creatures barely worthy of notice. They had captured human scouts, tortured them for information, and executed them as examples to other inferior species. But every captured human had been a weapon. Every execution had been a trigger. Every moment of Zeltharian superiority had been an illusion carefully crafted by a species that understood warfare at a level the Zeltharians had never imagined. "Sir," Commander Voltorix said quietly, "we're receiving multiple signals from across the system. Zeltharian colonies, mining stations, and research facilities are all reporting similar cascade effects. Sir, it's not just the homeworld. They've infiltrated everything." Admiral Kexthran closed all 6 eyes and tried to think. The Zeltharian Empire had thousands of installations across hundreds of star systems. If the humans had infiltrated all of them, if they had been placing cascade devices for years, then the destruction of Zelthar Prime was just the beginning. "Communications," he ordered. "Attempt to establish contact with outlying fleet elements. I want to know the status of our other systems." The reports came in over the next several hours, and they painted a picture of systematic destruction. The humans hadn't just targeted the Zeltharian homeworld. They had simultaneously activated cascade devices across the entire empire. Military installations, industrial complexes, research facilities, civilian colonies. Everything was under attack. But there was something else in the reports that troubled Admiral Kexthran even more than the destruction. The timing was too perfect. The coordination was too precise. The cascade activations had all occurred within minutes of each other across multiple star systems. That suggested a level of communication and coordination that should have been impossible for the human technology they had observed. Unless, "Commander," Admiral Kexthran said slowly, "what do we actually know about human technology?" "Sir, based on our analysis of captured vessels, human technology appears to be significantly less advanced than ours. Their ships are smaller, their weapons are less powerful, and their FDL capabilities are limited. But what if that analysis is wrong? What if the vessels we captured were deliberately designed to appear primitive?" Commander Veltorix paused his work at the tactical displays. "Sir, are you suggesting that the humans have been deliberately showing us inferior technology?" "I'm suggesting that a species capable of the infiltration we've witnessed, capable of creating weapons specifically designed to destroy our technology, capable of coordinating simultaneous attacks across multiple star systems, might not be as primitive as we believed." The Admiral activated long-range sensors and directed them toward human space. What he saw changed everything. Where Zeltharian intelligence had reported a small, scattered human presence, the sensors now detected massive fleets. Ships larger than anything in the Zeltharian Navy. Technology signatures that defied analysis. Industrial complexes that dwarfed the greatest Zeltharian installations. "By the crystalline depths," Commander Veltorix whispered, "they've been hiding entire fleets." "Sir, the energy signatures we're detecting suggest technology centuries ahead of what we believe they possessed." Admiral Kexthran realized that the Zeltharian Empire had made the most catastrophic intelligence failure in galactic history. They hadn't been dealing with a primitive species trying to scout their territory. They had been dealing with a vastly superior civilization that had been studying them, infiltrating them, and preparing to eliminate them as a threat. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They had concluded a war that the Zeltharians hadn't even realized was being fought. "Sir," Commander Veltorix reported urgently, "we're detecting massive human fleet movements throughout the sector. It appears that they're moving to occupy our installations that haven't been destroyed by the cascade effects." The final piece of the human strategy became clear. The cascade devices hadn't been designed just to destroy Zeltharian civilization. They had been designed to clear the way for human occupation of Zeltharian territory. The humans weren't just eliminating a threat. They were seizing the resources of an entire empire. Admiral Kexthran made the most difficult decision of his long career. "All ships," this is the Admiral, "begin immediate evacuation of all Zeltharian personnel from affected systems. We are no longer fighting for victory. We are fighting for species survival." As the once mighty Zeltharian fleet began its desperate retreat, Admiral Kexthran realized that they were no longer the apex species in this region of space. They had become refugees, fleeing from a human empire that had outmaneuvered them so completely that the war was over before the Zeltharians had even known it had begun. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the TDF Prometheus, watching the tactical displays show the complete collapse of Zeltharian resistance across 17 star systems. The massive human dreadnought, one of hundreds now emerging from stealth positions throughout the sector, represented technology that the Zeltharians had never suspected humanity possessed. Status report on Operation Cascade. Admiral Chun ordered, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. Captain Torres, her tactical officer, manipulated the holographic displays with practiced efficiency. Ma'am, we have confirmation of successful Cascade activation at 437 strategic targets across the Zeltharian Empire. Primary military installations are at 93% degradation. Industrial complexes show 87% capacity loss. Civilian infrastructure varies by location, but overall effectiveness is at acceptable levels. Admiral Chen nodded, though she felt no satisfaction in the destruction. The operation had been necessary, but that didn't make it pleasant. Casualties among our deep cover operatives? Ma'am, we lost 62 operatives in the Cascade activations. All volunteers, all heroes, including... Captain Torres paused, consulting his reports. Including your brother, Marcus. His activation at the primary Coliseum was the trigger that began the coordinated assault. Admiral Chen closed her eyes for a moment, honoring her brother's sacrifice. Marcus had known when he accepted the deep cover mission that it was likely a one-way assignment. He had volunteered anyway, understanding that the survival of humanity might depend on his willingness to die in enemy territory. Every human operative who had allowed themselves to be captured by the Zeltharians had made the same choice. They had endured torture, imprisonment, and execution to place Cascade devices throughout the enemy empire. Their sacrifice had made possible the most successful military operation in human history. Ma'am, Captain Torres continued, we're receiving communications from Zeltharian fleet elements attempting to surrender. Put them through, Admiral Chen ordered. The holographic display activated, showing the damaged bridge of a Zeltharian warship. Admiral Kexthran, his crystalline form dim with defeat, appeared before them. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of species-ending failure. Human commanders, Admiral Kexthran said, I am Admiral Kexthran of the Zeltharian Imperial Fleet. I am authorized to negotiate terms of surrender for all remaining Zeltharian forces. Admiral Chun studied the alien commander with calm attention. Intelligence reports had indicated that this particular Zeltharian was among the more reasonable members of their military leadership, which was why he had been allowed to survive the initial assault. Admiral Kexthran, she replied, I am Fleet Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. Before we discuss terms, I believe you deserve to understand exactly what has happened to your civilization. The Zeltharian Admiral's 6 eyes focused intently on her. We understand that we have been defeated by a species we greatly underestimated. We understand that our intelligence regarding human capabilities was catastrophically inadequate. Admiral, you understand far less than you think, Admiral Chen said. What you've experienced isn't just a military defeat. It's the conclusion of a plan that has been in motion for over 50 years. She activated tactical displays showing the true scope of human space. The Zeltharians had believed human civilization to consist of perhaps a dozen systems with primitive technology. The reality was an empire spanning over 300 systems with technology that surpassed Zeltharian capabilities by several centuries. Admiral Kexthran's crystalline form shifted colors rapidly, indicating shock and disbelief. Impossible. Our long-range scouts have surveyed human space extensively. We found only primitive installations and limited populations. You found exactly what we wanted you to find, Admiral Chen explained. Every human installation your scouts discovered was specifically designed to appear primitive. Every ship you encountered was using obsolete technology. Every piece of intelligence you gathered was carefully crafted to reinforce your belief in your own superiority. The scope of the deception was staggering. For decades, humanity had maintained an elaborate facade of technological inferiority while secretly developing capabilities that far exceeded anything the Zeltharians possessed. The primitive human ships that had been captured were actually sophisticated intelligence-gathering platforms designed to be captured. But why? Admiral Kexthran asked. If your technology was so advanced, why not simply conquer us directly? Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. Because direct conquest wasn't the goal, Admiral. The goal was understanding. We needed to learn everything about your species, your culture, your technology, and your strategic thinking before making any decisions about your future. She activated additional displays showing the comprehensive intelligence operation that had preceded the Cascade assault. Human operatives with advanced biological camouflage technology had infiltrated Zeltharian society at every level. They had lived as Zeltharians for years, learning their language, their customs, their weaknesses, and their capabilities. We discovered that your species has a fundamental flaw, Admiral Chen continued. You are incapable of recognizing intelligence in beings you consider inferior. That blindness made you extraordinarily vulnerable to infiltration. The humans had exploited this weakness ruthlessly. Operatives who could perfectly mimic Zeltharian biology had taken positions throughout their empire. They had worked as engineers, scientists, military personnel, and government officials. They had observed every aspect of Zeltharian civilization while remaining completely undetected. The maintenance teams that placed the Cascade devices in your installations weren't humans disguised as Zeltharians, Admiral Chen explained. They were humans who had been genetically and cybernetically modified to become perfect Zeltharian duplicates. Our biotechnology allows us to assume the physical characteristics of any species we study. Admiral Kexthran's 6 eyes widened as the implications became clear. How many of our people were actually your operatives? Approximately 12,000 individuals holding key positions throughout your empire, Admiral Chen replied. They've been providing intelligence and preparing for this operation for over 20 years. The revelation was devastating. The Zeltharian Empire had been thoroughly compromised without ever suspecting it. Their most trusted officials, their most skilled engineers, their most accomplished scientists had included humans who were gathering intelligence and sabotaging their infrastructure from within. But that's not the most important thing you need to understand, Admiral Chen continued. The Cascade operation wasn't an act of aggression. It was an act of self-defense. She activated intelligence displays showing Zeltharian military plans that had been gathered by their deep cover operatives. The plans detailed a systematic campaign to locate and exterminate every human colony in the galaxy. The Zeltharians hadn't just considered humanity to be inferior. They had planned to commit complete genocide. Your government designated humanity as a contaminating influence that needed to be eliminated to preserve Zeltharian purity, Admiral Chen said. Your military was preparing for what you called the human cleansing operation. You intended to sterilize every human world. Admiral Kexthran's crystalline form went dark with shame. We believe humans were a threat to galactic order. Our scientists convinced us that inferior species would contaminate the galaxy if allowed to spread. And that belief, Admiral Chen said, made this response necessary. We couldn't allow a species with your technological capabilities to pursue genocide against humanity. We couldn't risk a conventional war that might devastate both civilizations. So we chose a different approach. The Cascade operation had been designed to accomplish several objectives simultaneously. It eliminated the Zeltharian military threat while minimizing casualties. It demonstrated human technological superiority without requiring a prolonged war. And it provided humanity with access to Zeltharian territory and resources. The Cascade devices were programmed to target infrastructure, not population centers, Admiral Chen explained. Your casualties have been significant, but they could have been much higher. We chose precision over destruction because we're not interested in genocide. We're interested in preventing genocide. Admiral Kexthran processed this information with visible difficulty. His species had prepared for war against a primitive enemy, only to discover that they were the primitive ones facing an incomprehensibly advanced foe. "What are your terms?" he asked finally. "Complete demilitarization of all Zeltharian forces," Admiral Chen replied. "Relocation of your population to designated systems under human oversight. Reparations to be paid through industrial labor and technological cooperation. And, most importantly, comprehensive re-education programs to address the supremacist ideologies that led to this situation." The terms were harsh, but not genocidal. Humanity was offering the Zeltharians a chance to survive and rebuild, but under strict supervision that would prevent future aggression. Admiral Chen continued, "Your species made the fundamental mistake of believing that technological advancement automatically confers superiority. Humanity learned long ago that the most dangerous enemy is the one you underestimate. We've spent centuries developing not just better technology, but better strategies for dealing with threats." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "The Cascade operation wasn't just about destroying your military capabilities. It was about demonstrating to every species in this region of space that humanity cannot be threatened with genocide. The next civilization that attempts to eliminate us will face the same response." Admiral Kexthran looked at his tactical displays, seeing the overwhelming human fleet presence throughout what had once been Zeltharian space. Hundreds of ships that were individually more powerful than entire Zeltharian task forces. Technology that made their most advanced systems look like primitive tools. "How long have humans possessed this level of technology?" he asked. "Long enough," Admiral Chen replied. "But that's not the important question, Admiral. The important question is what happens next. Your species can choose to accept our terms and begin the long process of rebuilding under human guidance. Or you can choose to fight a war you cannot possibly win." The choice was clear. The Zeltharian Empire was finished, but the Zeltharian species could survive if they abandoned their supremacist beliefs and accepted human authority. "We accept your terms," Admiral Kexthran said quietly. "We surrender unconditionally." Admiral Chen nodded. "Admiral, your species has the potential to contribute to galactic civilization once you abandon the belief that might makes right. We hope that in time, Zeltharians and humans can coexist as equals. But that day will come only after your people have learned that true strength comes not from dominating others, but from understanding them." As the formal surrender was processed, Admiral Chen reflected on the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. The Cascade operation had been a stunning success, but it was also a reminder of the price of freedom. Marcus and 61 other operatives had given their lives to protect humanity from genocide. Their sacrifice had ensured that no species would ever again underestimate the humans' willingness to do whatever was necessary to survive.